Hey everyone, thank you and welcome to the first Faders Up with Trovarsi. This show is about speaking with artists, getting into their live setups, talking about the intricacies and the complexity. We're going to have an opportunity to watch a live performance, watch a breakdown of their setup, and then we're going to talk about how they chose their instruments and basically why just we all want to play live and the nuances of that. So without further ado, I want to first say that I am super honored to have my very first guest. He is an LA born and raised. He's a producer, a hip hop producer, a composer, a sound designer. He's been using modular for over 10 years. And this is Shiro, aka Voltagectrlr. Whew, nerves. Love you, Shiro.
What up, y'all? What up, sis? How you doing?
Thank you so much for doing
thank you
it.
for having me. I'm super honored to be the first guest. We're gonna make this one memorable.
Yes, man, and you are the man. Like the way you play, your performances. I'm super excited to share with everyone and get into it. So let's get into your performance first.
Uh-oh.
All the way over to the right.
Voltagectrlr. This is Los Angeles. Voltage control. Voltage control. Voltage control. This is Los Angeles. Get your candle. Voltage.
Clack, clack, rocker. Feel them in your heart chopper.
Tell me just what you wanna do.
Kiss the pyramid, experiment with high explosive. I slap box with Jesus, lick shots to Joseph.
Voltage control.
Kiss the pyramid, experiment with high explosive. I slap box with Jesus, lick shots to Joseph.
Get your candle. Voltage control. Voltage control.
Spark that shit. It's the rain.
Tell me just what you wanna do. shit that make you feel brand new.
This is the year that I come in and just devastate. I rock your beats.
Voltage control. This is Los Angeles. Voltage control.
Clack, clack, blocker. Feel them in your heart chakra. Spark that.
Woohoo! That is amazing. Always. You always make it look so smooth and easy.
Thank you.
Hear me okay? Wow. Wow. I mean, do you want to kind of tell us a little bit like what your process was with do you feel like we should go right into
I can give like a quick breakdown. We can go in the video after, but I can give like just a quick summary of what was going on in the patch, and then we can kind of show them the video, and then if anybody has questions, we can go from there. So
yes,
okay. So basically, this patch or this performance is made up of 4 building blocks: the Octatrack and Digitac for samples and sampling, and the Digitone and modular for the synthesis part of it. The reason why I chose a smaller modular system, I'm just using the 62 HP pallet case. Before COVID, I was like really focused on being like show and travel ready. So I was like really downsizing the system. And for the better part of 12 years, I was performing with at least like, I started with like an 18U system that I used to perform with, 18U modular system and a machine drum. And that's just a lot of modular to be, toting around. So I simplified it to 62 HP analog modular, and then the Digitone, is a 4-track digital modular. But with both of those, it kind of fulfills that need of like 18U worth of synthesis in a smaller package. So that's why I chose those two. And for the sampler, I like the Octatrack because it does some really good sample mangling, but you can also do some like traditional hip hop stuff as well. And I use the Digitac to like supplement some of the drum sounds on the Octatrack to like fatten up kicks and stuff. I typically always use loops in the Octatrack for drums, and then I always use 1-shots in the Digitac. Gotcha. That's just the way I prefer to use it.
Nice.
Sometimes I'll have loops to launch on the Digitac as well, but by and large, I usually use it for 1-shots.
Got you. All right. So then before we kind of get even further in, just to tell everybody that's watching right now, make sure if you have questions, drop them in the chat. We're going to play just a quick breakdown video. So he's going to take us through and just kind of pan over the gear and just talk about how it's patched. And then we'll go back and cover some more details.
Dope.
Low voltage controller.
Checking in with you guys for the first episode of Faders Up. I'm going to give you a quick breakdown of the gear that I used for this live set. I started out with the modular and the Digitone to handle the synthesis, and on the sampling side, I have the Octatrack and the Digitac. What I'm going to do now is demystify this live session and reverse engineer the sonic building blocks that make up this live set. So we're going to get started with the modular. This is a 2-voice system. So we have an oscillator, clock divider, another oscillator, low pass filter. We have a modulation source. 2 channels are used for envelopes, 2 are used for LFOs, and we have the expander for that. Next to that, we have 2 distings. I'm only using one of them for tap tempo delay. Next to that, we have Pico effects. I'm not using that. And we have the passive low pass gate. Next to that, we have the Optimix. And lastly, we have the Mutant Brain MIDI to CV module. and that's going into the Digitone. So now we'll cross from the wrong side of the tracks to the other side and go to the digital version of synthesis on the Digitone. Thing I really like about the Digitone is when you really like kind of, open up the lift up the hood and look and see what's going on underneath it. It's basically a modular. It's a 4-track modular in a little black box, and I really enjoy using it because the same style of patches that I do on the analog modular, I can do on the Digitone, but I have the added benefits of saving the patches. And running, I usually limit it to just 8 different sequences for a live set. This particular one I just used 5, and so you have 4 tracks of 5 modular complex synth patches. And this is similar to the way I approach my bigger modular system. I always break things down into 4 tracks. So jumping on the Digitone was like was like jumping into familiar territory. The next thing I use on the Digitone is the MIDI sequencer. I sequence the analog modular with 2 tracks of MIDI from the Digitone, and I use the mutant brain to translate the MIDI to CV signal. So the Digitone is generating pitch and gate for the 2 oscillators in the analog modular, as well as generating a clock from the clock divider from the mutant brain to the tap tempo on the Disting tap tempo delay. So that brings us to our next building block, but it's actually not a building block. This is actually the foundation of the live setup, which is the Octatrack handling clock for everything. And I have the Digitac hooked up to the inputs of the Octatrack. The Digitone is going out to the mixer, and the modular is also going out to the main mixer that's going into the recording interface. So let's get into how I'm using the Octatrack. So the Octatrack is used for sampling, of course. So I have on one of the tracks, I have a drum loop. Another track, I'll have like a vinyl sample chop. 2 tracks will be audio tags. I might have another track with another like acapella if I'm doing a remix, and maybe more vinyl chops. And then the last 2 tracks are always the through track for the Digitac. And then track 8 is master out with delay effects and either a compressor or sometimes an EQ. So the next thing I want to talk about with the Octatrack, of course, is the infamous crossfader, which I absolutely love. Given that my former attribute was DJ Shiro, I was a full-fledged turntablist from Music Fiends and 1200 Hobos, like we were about that scratch life. So I'm very familiar with the fader, and I really love using it with samples. So it's familiar territory once again, mangling sound and manipulating it with the fader. So I use the fader quite a lot, maybe sometimes a little too much. It's like I'm stuttering or I have Tourette's, so bear with me and say a prayer. So lastly, to round this out, we have the Digitac, and the Digitac is used for one-shot drum samples just as a way to like fatten up the drum loop, or sometimes to have alternative loops to mix and match, because I really like having the option of being able to mix and match on the fly all these sonic building blocks. So like I might originally compose them to be like one cohesive song, and it'll go from sequence to sequence or song to song. But also like if I just feel like improving, I could drop everything down to a beat, mix and match beats, mix and match bass lines or patches or whatever, and just explore. So thanks for tuning in to the first episode of Faders Up. This is Shiro Fujioka, aka Voltagectrlr. Peace and love.
All right. Thank you,
What
Shiro.
up? You can hear me, right?
All right. Yep. You can hear me okay too?
Good. Yep,
All
we're
right.
all good.
So I'm glad that we were able to kind of show the gear, because I know often, I'm sure it happens to you too, we go to a live show, we see people perform, and we're like, let's lift that veil a little bit. Like, what are they doing? Like even though we play live, you see how other people are using gear, and you still want to know, how are they doing it? And then take it further, like, why did they pick that? So that's sort of what I want to kind of get into with you is like, I know you've been working with modular, and you mentioned before that you said, you started 18U with the machine drum. And now when you pick your oscillators, like what is your thought process, I guess, when you're picking those analog oscillators now that you're trying to scale down?
I really love, dual complex oscillators, but I usually don't like the ones that are like pre-wired. So I usually just always mix and match my own favorite oscillators and then some kind of way to cross modulate them. So like right now I have the anti-oscillator from Wired and a 2 HP oscillator, just, because of the size. I just needed a plain bread and butter oscillator, and then an oscillator that has a little more character is usually what I rely on.
Okay.
And for small systems, for a small 2U modular system, you can actually get a lot out of it with good patching skills and two awesome oscillators that you can cross modulate. You can do a lot with cross modulation, from modulating primary oscillator to the secondary. Oscillator 1 can modulate oscillator 2, and that gets a certain sonic characteristic. But then you can go the other way and have 2 cross modulate 1, or have them kind of like do feedback loops. And all these sonic recipes give you like so many different tones and timbres to explore, to like really give you a different sound as you go through your set. So I rely on that a lot if I'm doing more like strictly modular stuff.
Okay. And so like with that, then is that where, because I know before, like I've seen your setup another time, and it was like you had the maths, for example, now you had the disting in there. And is that sort of, I guess, was that play into the process of choosing smaller modules? And
yeah, the disting was essential because I needed that Swiss Army knife module that, for a small system, sometimes, you might need, some effects, or other times you might need more modulation or another envelope. And that just answers all those questions. Pardon me. When you come to patching, even from patch to patch, sometimes I'll switch, the modules that I'm using just to have a different sonic characteristic or flavor. And I finally have a system that doesn't have maths, and it felt really weird for the first few months because I've been like, maths was, I think, the second module that I bought. So, and it's always been in like every new version of my system, like it always starts with maths. So this is the first time that I like kind of ditched that. And I think the thing that I use the most to replace that is the Zadar, because I use that, like half of the Zadar is always dedicated to envelopes, and then the other half is always dedicated to modulation.
so now with the Zadar, you're able to save presets.
Exactly. So that's like essential. It's like the closest thing I can get to like preset saving. So I don't have to do a lot of like wiggling and stuff when you're setting up for a set or whatever. You just have everything dialed in.
And how does it flow into when you're changing presets? Do you feel like it's an immediacy, like with jumping?
Usually I don't change. Usually with that module, I haven't changed presets too much, like within the patch. I haven't gotten to that much. The only thing I will do is like tweak it live. For instance, if I'm starting a set like a little more ambient, I'll like open up the attack on the envelope, so it kind of like washes the sound, so it's not very percussive. And then as the patch evolves, or I want to move the composition along, I might make those less soft and make them more percussive to get into like a rhythm or something. So I usually do stuff like that, mess with the attack and the decay. I'll just tweak that live.
Okay.
Yeah, I usually don't rely on presets for envelope stuff. I haven't experimented enough with it to like feel comfortable doing that live.
And to remember which one.
Yeah, exactly. I try to minimize that.
So now, okay, speaking of remembering patches and where to go, but before we kind of move through the modular to the hardware, and you mentioned the mutant brains. Is that I have two questions. When you use the mutant brains, is this the first module that you've used to make the connection between MIDI to CV? And if not, what have you tried besides?
No, that's actually my very first MIDI to CV module. I was very against MIDI for a long time. Like the whole time that I used the machine drum, I was just using an impulse, to trigger the modular. Like, it's basically like mimicking a control voltage tick, basically. Okay. Which was dope because it gives you a chance to like make, kind of like manual clocks and stuff like that on multiple different tracks. But I finally got to the point where I was like, okay, I'm going to stop like being a MIDI hater and go back to the world of MIDI. Because like once I found control voltages, it was like getting jumped in a gang. I'm like, yeah, I'm in CV gang now. Like I'm not dealing with MIDI no more. But
MIDI's out.
Yeah. But as like I started using the Octatrack and the Digitone, all these like MIDI devices, I'm like, okay, bro, you got to just like bite the bullet and go back to the world of MIDI. And after dealing with like so many wires in the modular world, like I was introduced to MIDI before, you know, the whole like manual patching CV. And for some reason, like MIDI was confusing to me back in the day in like my MPC days. But like after modular, like MIDI is a joke, you know. So I came back and I'm like, oh my God, this is like too easy. So it made life like so much more simplistic. And unfortunately, the occupational hazard of the easiness of MIDI is I started buying more gear, you know. So modular like kind of kept me, you know, like busy, and then like my pocket would be like, okay, yeah, chill on the modular. But then I got into these boxes.
And now you're like into the hardware.
Yeah.
So have you tried other synths? So I know that you've been using the Digitone for a while. You've even create patches, and you sell patches. You make. I have some of your patches. They're amazing.
Thank you.
Packs. Were you using any other like FM synthesizer or anything else that you wanted to incorporate with your hardware, or did you just?
No, that was one of those things. Like for me, like I always joke around. I call the Digitone the poor man's Buchla, because it's like pretty close to what you would get with the Buchla. You know, being able to save patches, and it, you know, having complex oscillators, and you know, you can design the envelopes to sound like low pass gates. It's got good filters. So if you're into sound design, like you can make stuff sound, you know, a little more organic or a little more analog. So I love that about it. And patch recall, you know, and when I'm not at my modular, I can literally translate my Digitone patches onto my modular because I set everything up pretty similar.
Nice. Have you done the update? Just curious. I haven't had an opportunity.
I'm like first round updater. I'm like, I'm gonna go right into it. Like the day I find out, I'm like, I do it, and then I find out there's like bugs and stuff, and I'm like, oh, I should have waited. But I you know, I'm a glutton for punishment, so I just go on and just do it anyway.
Jump right in it.
Yeah.
Now, would you like recommend not doing that before you have a show or performance?
Yes.
Right.
That's one thing I won't do. I'll never do updates before shows. I'm like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Like, we'll deal with that when we get back home.
Right.
Yeah.
It's ironic. Like I'll swap a module out the night of my performance, but I will not do an update.
Yeah.
Piece of hardware or Ableton or anything like that.
Yeah, nah. It's not worth the risk.
Or like I've done that, like whatever. It's just, I feel like you have a little more control, right?
Oh yeah.
I just want to look over at the chat and see if anybody's like dropping.
Yeah, pay attention to
that. No, lots of good feedback though. Everyone was loving your performance.
Nice.
It was amazing. So yeah, I have some more questions then. So when you so let's talk about the Octatrack for a second. I know the fader aspect. I know you've had DJ experience in your past. Is that another? Did you immediately go into Octatron, or did you ever try the SP404 with the and things? And do you feel like once you made that transition, did you all of a sudden were able to not use other things? Or sorry, that's a lot of question right there.
No, I'm totally following you. My start in the pro audio gear, like the very first piece of pro audio gear I got was the MPC 62, like back in the 90s.
Oh wow.
You know, so that was my foundation. Actually, I still have that same sampler. It needs some TLC, but it still works. The screen is dim and the pads are dirty, but it works perfectly other than that. But yeah, so I have a heavy MPC background, heavy like, you know, 90s boom bap hip hop background, you know, born and raised on that stuff. And later I got into checking out the 404 because I liked a lot of artists that were using the 404. Rest in peace to Ross G, who is absolutely the king of the 404, king of the beats in LA too. And yeah, I just always like to give him his props and respect. And he's transitioned, so we always got to hail him up and keep his spirit alive. But yeah, 404, I spent a few years messing around with that. And then I think I got out of samples kind of in the 404 era, which was like probably 2007 or 8, somewhere. I don't know, 2007 or 8. It was before I left LA. So it had to be before 2009.
Okay.
I was like done with samples, and I was actually done with music for a while. That's why I left Los Angeles and headed out.
Kind of needed a break.
Yeah, just a refresh. Hit the life refresh button.
Right. I've been there. So yeah, then so you're jumping back into the
Octatrack. So
kind of was it easy transition? Although I shouldn't say easy and Octatrack necessarily in the same sentence, but
The gateway drug to the Octatrack was the Digitac. I actually got the Digitac first. That's what I got. Yeah, I got that first, and I was on the fence. I was like, I really wanted an Octatrack like more than anything. And then I was like, okay, I had a certain amount of money to spend, and I was like, I can either get an Octatrack or I can get a Digitac and Digitone. So I decided to go for the 2 boxes. You know, I was like, I'll go with the sampler that doesn't have all the like sampling mangling capabilities of the Octatrack, but it still keeps me in like boom bap hip hop mode, or if I want to do like IDM or techno, the Digitac will get you there. And then I was like, that with the FM, you know, capabilities of the Digitone, like that's a good combo. But you know, after a year, I was like, I kept looking at that Octatrack. I was like, I really want that though. and it just magically appeared on my doorstep one day, thanks to one of my students.
That's amazing. And you've been using it, and I've been watching. Yeah, I mean, you just make it look so easy. And I know, like when I first got my Octatrack, I had to meet up with Enrique Tines, for those of you out there.
Yeah, what up, Enrique?
And he's like, it's like drinking from a fire hose. So take small sips. And once he said that,
I wish somebody told me that, because I was ready to throw it out the window. I was frustrated.
I learned how to do one thing, and then I picked one thing at a time, and before you knew it, it just kind of like flowed. But I feel like with Electron, once you kind of get that workflow, a lot of it transitions over to their other gear. Would you agree? Or
yeah, no, absolutely. Once you demystify like one Electron box, like you kind of have like a skeleton key to like navigate through all of them. But one thing I have to point out about the Octatrack, and you can look back on my Instagram, like before Octatrack, my beard was like way less gray. So I attribute the wizardness to the Octatrack. Like, thank you, Octatrack.
nice.
Stressed me out.
Oh, okay. So I'm gonna peek in the chat too, and just make sure that I'm not missing anyone's questions here. So
From my experience, modular will rewire your mind. Yes, indeed.
Yeah. So Pedro has a question. It says, what do you think about unquantized Delafield groove on modular? How do you get those swings? That's a good question.
The easiest way to do that is to use whatever your sampler of choice is, and you know, program or don't program your swing there. You know, like just tap things in live, and what you see is what you get, or what you hear is what you get. And you know, just use that as master clock for everything else, and everything will be like on that swing or on the grid if you want to be on the grid, which I highly recommend you don't be on the grid.
Right. All right. Let me see. I think that's okay. So I have another question then for you too then. So when you going down to switching up your gear and changing it to a smaller setup and thinking, okay, I'm going to travel. How am I going to get this to work? Like, and throw it in a bag versus going from 18U to now a pallet case and smaller pieces of hardware. Do you feel that you've had to make a drastic change with setup? Like, or do you feel limited at first, or like?
Yeah, when I first made the switch and I started just using the 18U at home and no longer for live, there was just things that I was used to relying on. And it was kind of weird to just to not have those usual suspects. Like you know, used to doing the thing, you just grab for something, it's like, oh, it's not there. Actually, the whole side of the case I'm used to grabbing is like all like within this amount of space now. So right. Just from like a tactile perspective and like muscle memory, like you automatically are moving your arms like a certain distance. So from that standpoint, I really had to like dial that in. But the less is more approach always sparks my creativity, because my mind is like, okay, I have limited tools. Like, how much can I do with these tools? So it makes me like look at each component of this composition and try to maximize everything. So like every module I have, I try to get, you know, 2 or 3 functions out of it and just practice with those until they're just part of muscle memory. And then, you know, if you want to improv or whatever, you can like just really feel comfortable tweaking stuff and getting back to your start point. That's the main thing that I always stressed when I started doing modular performances. It's like almost take a mental snapshot of your patch. It might sound insane, but I take a mental snapshot of my patch and I see the dials like almost in clock position. So I'm like, okay, just quickly I'll be like, okay, this needs to be at 3 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, blah, blah, blah. That's
Right.
my start point. Then I'll start tweaking shit. And then I'll just kind of recall in my memory. I was like, okay, this goes to 3, this goes to 7. And it's just doing that every day. Like it just gets locked in there.
Right. You get used to where it will take you.
Yeah. So I just like your brain is the patch recall system at that point. So
Right.
it's almost like a good mental exercise. And it's probably like wiring up some like neural pathways or something.
I think you're probably right. Like space racers always like, take different routes when you're driving. And
No, I was talking about that earlier today.
For Alzheimer's, I'm like, well, I'm already remembering all these patches. Like what you're saying, I feel like it's definitely helping towards that. But okay, so when you first started modular, then for those that are watching and may just be starting off or just kind of just maybe new, like in the past year or two of their modular journey, do you feel like the modules that you picked at first were very like one per function, like versus now when you look for a module?
Well, that was when I started. That was for a few reasons. There just weren't a lot of multi-function modules. We were still in like, kind of like the bread and butter phase of modular. A lot of, like ladder filters and a lot of like, Euro version of Buchla, Euro version of Surge, so there weren't a lot of like, when I got in, it was like strictly analog. People were like anti-digital. And then like 5 years, there was this like weird shift where like everything became like a plugin behind the panel. So it just like totally flipped and like everything's digital. But the beauty of the digital switch on the technology side is that you have all the recallability and just the like, no limitations that you would have in a circuit. You can pack more complex functions behind one panel and make these, Swiss Army knife kind of modules because you're using code versus circuits,
Right.
So just the real estate of using code versus circuits, you're going to, get more bang for your buck.
Right.
The thing I love most about modular isn't just the analog signal path. It's more the tactile, interfacing with something away from the computer. Like that's the thing I love about it. So I don't hate on digital modules. Like I love them all.
Nice. No, me too. I definitely use a lot of digital modules. So, yeah, for sure. I just want to again just say thanks again for everyone that's tuning in. Make sure if you have questions for Shiro, be sure to drop them in the chat. And I do want to say shout out to some of our regular peeps that are out there. Thank you for supporting Faders Up here. And so I just kind of want to change gears a little bit, Shiro, and kind of talk about some of the things that you've been working on recently. Like, teenage engineering. Can I just toss that out there?
We could speak about that a little bit.
All right,
I'm trying secrecy for some stuff, but I'll speak about what I can because I don't want Emmy coming after me.
Do you want? I'll let you kind of share with us then. What you can? How about that? Like just
okay. We're gonna be collaborating with Teenage Engineering on some. Let's see, how could I word this? On a shift in the perspective of how artists work with instrument manufacturers. We're doing something that is innovative and different, and it hasn't been done before. So we're kind of blazing some trails, but the things that we're doing are not only going to be beneficial for us as artists, but we're like kind of like paving the way for a huge change in the way that the artists are valued with these companies.
That's amazing.
Because at the end of the day, like we're very instrumental in the purchasing decisions that people make, and also even the creative decisions that people make. We're showing people how to use these tools. So, companies should recognize and value people that are assisting and helping them get these instruments out.
I agree.
So that's kind of, vaguely what we're doing with Teenage Engineering. We're being celebrated as artists, and we're celebrating them for being innovative, not only with the way they design instruments, but they're bringing that innovation into honoring artists and honoring the people that support them, by honoring, people that use their gear and show people how to use their gear. It's a beautiful thing. And they're really blazing a trail that we hope that other equipment manufacturers follow suit and we might have to update our records and be a little bit more progressive.
Right. I love it. I love it. Now, can you tell us what is there any specific instrument that you're going to focus on, or is it sort of just in general right now? Or
I would say for right now it's in general, but
okay.
I would imagine that they see the value in my time spent in modular.
Got you. Okay. Okay. And I know that they've I think Susie Analog, Wajid. I saw that they're doing some things with the Detroit Underground Resistance, doing like a school, I believe.
Yeah.
It's amazing. That's
Yeah,
really
and can't forget Basic representing Los Angeles too.
No way. Yeah.
Yeah, you can't forget. There's no way you can forget them.
No, I cannot. Thank you for saying that too. Yes, you guys are amazing musicians, and I'm happy that they're doing this with you. And yeah, like I hope that this does kind of set that path and that tone.
Yeah, trust me, we're being freedom fighters for like all artists. Like you guys will love us.
Nice. Awesome. So then like speaking, okay, so kind of going into the modular, I noticed that you had some involvement, and I watched you and your segment on the documentary with Patching CV, the film.
Yeah.
How did they approach you, or how did that kind of?
They did. They approached me. It was funny. They had already picked a lot of artists. And one of the producers, David, was like just going through videos and listening to different artists' music and stuff. And I believe if memory serves me correctly, he said he got to like someone had recommended some of my stuff. So he was like listening to a bunch of people and listening to my stuff. And he said when my stuff was playing through his speakers, his son came in the room. His son, I believe, was like 18 at the time. Came in the room and he was like, I don't know who that is, but he should be in the film. So thank you, brother. I don't know David's son's name, but thank you.
I like
he recognized what like a lot of modular companies don't recognize. He's a very smart man.
Nice. Yep. Awesome. Oh, and Basics, HR Terror said Basics' birthday's tomorrow. So let's give him a shout out.
It is, yes. Happy birthday to Basic.
Happy birthday, Basic. If you're out there watching.
Yep, see you tomorrow, bro.
Yeah. But yeah, let me see. Just kind of checking in here. Just some great comments. People are watching the documentary, which is good. They're saying that it's been great. And let's okay, so I also know you're a photographer. And how does that influence your music, or does it? Or do you?
No, absolutely. I would say photography and also I paint. I haven't painted that much in years, but I used to be really known as a painter. I used to own a gallery. I was part owners of a gallery in Silver Lake, like back in 2005. I was all about that art life. So photography and visual art has always been a part of, it's been something I've been doing off and on in my life. But I would say early 2005 is when I started shooting pictures like a little more professionally, like where you actually get paid.
Right.
And like I've done stuff like LA Fashion Week and just different shoots for like album covers and stuff like that. And I just decided to get back into it after modular. I needed something that got me out of the house. So I was like, you know what, I'm gonna start getting into street photography, because that's something that I didn't explore much outside of like shooting pictures of street art and graffiti. I never got into just like strictly street photography where you're just like capturing moments, and it got me out of the house, and I was just like walk around and clear my head. And that would spark ideas. Like I might be hanging out somewhere and take a picture, and just like the shapes will like remind me of like a wavetable or something, because I'm a nerd. Okay. And I'll like file that away. I'm like, I wonder if I should like kind of like trace that building outline and see what that sounds like as a wavetable. And from there, I started doing this series called Street Photography and Synthesizers, where I would just go out, shoot video, talk a little bit, and snap pictures, and then I would compose music to the video. And that was a series I was doing for a while. I kind of stopped after this whole like COVID thing. There wasn't much to take pictures of. Everything looked like a barren wasteland. So now that people are out and about again, I'm actually been getting out more and shooting pictures. So I'll probably do a new episode of Street Art and Photography on my, synthesizers and photography on my YouTube channel.
Nice. I know you also you were posting some of that on IG as well before
COVID.
Yeah. Yes, it was beautiful. So do you feel that, I'm sorry, I just lost my train of thought for a moment. So with everything that we talked about, how do you see how this path that you're on, like what, even like next year, do you have any plans of how this is going to take you, or where do you kind of see all of this unfolding for you? Or do you just kind of,
There's part of me that always, like, I love improv, and as time progresses, I take that improv energy to life, so I'm a very go with the flow kind of person, but there is also, a loosely configured plan or a blueprint. And I would say the thing that I'm focusing in on more is some proper releases. I've been doing a series of just like mixtapes just to get some like Modbap sketches out there. I didn't want to do anything that was like too overproduced and too refined. I wanted to keep it raw, like, the elements of hip hop that I come from. I wanted to bring that to the modular world, and not always, and kind of how modern hip hop now is like really overproduced and everything's multi-track. Like, I wanted to do just strictly like 2-track raw hip hop stuff.
no.
But now that I have like 3 other mixtapes in the can that I'm gonna release. So now I'm focusing more on composition again and doing like, multi-track recordings and mixed and mastered albums. So I would say the rest of this year and mostly like next year, I'm going to release a lot of full albums. I have a modular rock album that's been done for like 3 years.
Cool.
And I have a modular synth jazz album that's been done for about 2 years. So those 2 will come out, and I'll finally release a full-length techno album.
Nice. That's going to be sick. Nice. So yes, for everyone out there, just so you know, like, I'm sure people know you about the hip hop, but you IDM, ambient. When I first saw you perform, I think you were doing an ambient patch.
Yeah.
And
I think that was in Claremont, if I remember right.
It's in Claremont.
Yeah.
But you mentioned Modbap. Do you want to kind of talk to us a little bit about that, and just kind of just explain to those who may not know what it is that are out there? What is it? What's your involvement in that movement?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So a lot of people don't know, like, I'm born and raised in Los Angeles, but I ended up moving out of LA and moved to Arizona.
Mm-hmm.
And in Arizona, I became a biodynamic farmer and a chef and a sound practitioner, like doing sound healing and counseling at a healing retreat. And my creativity and artistic side was like still living in Los Angeles. And he came for a visit, and I got really bored in Arizona. And I was like, what am I going to do with my free time? And now I have a little extra change in my pocket. Like, what on earth am I going to do? And I remembered I loved, like, just the weird sounds of like modular records and stuff. I bought like Switched on Rock, Switched on Bach, and Silver Apples, the Morton Subotnick record. And I was reminded of that when I moved to AZ, and I was like, that's it. I'm gonna like build a modular or buy a modular. And just did a web search and found a particular modular enthusiast website that I won't say because the name is quite offensive. And I'm sure you guys can connect the dots. But I went to that site and just got blown away with, this new thing called Eurorack. And I was literally living on a mountain. Like, I had a house with my girlfriend on a mountain, 3 acres. There's like nothing to do but make modular music. So that became my hobby, and I come from a hip hop background. So I was like, how can I blend, these weird modular sounds with hip hop? And I was thinking about what I used to do on the MPC, but sampling these records. So I was like, oh, now I can make my own sample material with this modular. So originally, that's what I wanted to do. I just wanted to use this, modular as a sound design source to make boom bap hip hop and not have to like always sample records, was the original idea. But then I got bit by the modular bug, which, I had no idea that was going to happen. So I was like, move away samplers and all that stuff. And I just wanted to make these weird sounds, to the point where my girlfriend came in one day. She was like, when are you going to make like regular music again? She was like getting tired of it. And then I was like, okay, maybe I need to bring some more structure into it. That's when I started doing more like boom bap stuff with the modular. But I was really into just tweaking the modular live. I didn't want to sample it, which I didn't for many years, which helped, me have a better vocabulary with the modular. Like, I knew samples and, beat making and all that stuff. But I wanted to bring something to hip hop that didn't exist, which was instrumentation. But I still wanted it to sound electronic, because, you know, a lot of people don't recognize hip hop is a branch off the electronic music tree. You know, it kind of gets, you know, treated like it's its own thing, but it comes from a long lineage of electronic music. So I wanted to bring some other elements from other electronic music to hip hop, because the way I was taught hip hop was it's a culture. You know, it's not just a music, it's not just a means for making money. It's a culture. You know, there's standards and practices, you know, there's tradition. And one of the traditions in hip hop that gets lost in translation is add on, you know, add on and don't, you know, you add on and don't subtract from culture. You append, you know, you don't replace, you don't erase. So my contribution to hip hop was like, I'm gonna bring modular to hip hop. You know, that's going to be my thing that I contribute, my donation, you know, to this hip hop nation that has changed a lot of people's lives, that everybody just like sees as a means to make money or to get fame. I'm like, no, I want to be cemented in history of music. You know, to contribute to the history of music is important to me, more so than, you know, my bank account or having a Grammy or any of that goofy shit. Like, I don't care about that. You know, I care about making contributions. I care about influencing people. So I wanted to really lay a solid foundation, you know, with Modbap. And when I created it, it didn't even have a name. It was just something I was doing. And years later, I moved back to LA and I'm at NAM and I meet Corey, aka B-Boy Tech Report.
Yep.
And at the time, like he was like kind of getting ready to get into modular. And I believe like probably like a year or so after that, he got into modular, and he's another hip hop head. And we kind of kept in touch a little bit, but not so much. So we were both like developing this stuff. Also, I have to mention Bryce, aka Upright, who actually introduced Corey and I. He was also doing, you know, Modbap before it was called Modbap. Corey is the one who coined the phrase. But people say I'm the godfather because I was out on the mountaintop pulling down the energy, and then you know, it's like I made the baby and Corey named the baby. So that's basically like how I can simplify it.
Nice.
But yeah, but we squatted up, you know, once we kind of found all these pockets of people doing the same thing. We're like, you know, like, why not join forces and like, you know, Voltron this shit.
Hell yeah. I mean, I know that's where we all got together at Synthplex.
Exactly.
You guys did the panel, talked about Modbap, and we've gotten together here in my studio and had some live jam sessions.
Yeah, it's important for people to know, like, you are official Modbap squad member. And the thing that I love about you being the Modbap squad member is that you hold down the techno sector. And again, we're getting into electronic music. Like, techno is like a huge part of electronic music, and hip hop is another one of those branches. So it's like we need to have all these styles of music, you know, together. Like most hip hop crews or any crews, it's like segregated by music style. I'm like, yeah, we are too. We're all electronic musicians, you know, so it's all good.
That's true. That's true. And I appreciate that. I definitely feel that I am a member.
Absolutely.
And, I know we have some things coming, and then I'm looking forward to all of it. And just going back to the artwork, just to let people know, like, that's, if you're wondering, when you see his videos, and that's why, like, he's an artist, a photographer, a videographer. And if you're wondering why those videos look so the art with it, there you go. Yeah, I just wanted to mention that. And you also teach as well, just kind of throwing that out there. I know that you have a couple students that are learning modular as well. You're still
I'm not teaching currently. I've kind of put that on hold just until I get my sea legs with teenage engineering, and once I get that schedule worked out with the 9 hours ahead working with Swedish people, once that's all like ironed out, then I'll get back to teaching. But I am producing some some classes that people can go and, like, you know, just purchase a video or subscribe to a video, and there'll be an ongoing series of like intro to modular. And I get so many requests on, people are like, when are you going to do an Octatrack masterclass? I'm like, okay, I'm just going to make a video, like kind of like my setup and walk people through that. And there you'll have it, like cemented in history forever.
Nice. I think that would be great. I think it'd be very much appreciated. I know.
You hear that, Electron? I would be much appreciated.
Yeah.
Get with the program.
I'm just gonna glance over in the chat here, and no, hey, I'm with you 100%. And I just want to make sure I just giving a shout out to everyone again. Thank you for tuning in to the first Faders Up with Trovarsi and my first honorary guest, whom I love so much.
Thank you. Love you too, sis.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. And yes, is there anything you want to kind of share out there with our synth fam before we wrap it up?
I would say the one thing that I share with myself and all my friends and students is, as an artist, like the most valuable thing you can do for yourself and for your audience is to be your authentic self. Because one, there's no other you on the planet, and two, you can never fuck up being yourself. Like, how can you make a mistake being you? You know, so that's my foolproof plan of being a good artist, is just be yourself.
I like it. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I just want to let everyone know, thank you once again. We'll be back for the next Faders Up on September 17th, and we will have Frey, Daughters of Drexia as well.
Oh, what up? Dope.
So
thanks a lot, y'all, for tuning in too. I really appreciate your ears and eyes.
Thank you. See you next time.
Peace and love, y'all.
Peace and love.